first financial crisis. And today we've got a very special guest, none other than Ruiz, who is the founder of the Personal Finance Challenge YouTube channel. So a bit of the backstory of how I found Ruiz is that both of us actually are in the Personal Finance FB group. And I guess both of us have been posting quite regularly.
Yeah.
And I was going through some of the materials that he was posting, and essentially I was looking for people who are open to share their story. And when I stumbled upon his video on how he was sharing his story of how he got into depression and anxiety 7 years ago, I was actually very surprised and inspired at the same time, because this kind of story, how not many people are willing to share, especially people from my generation. We always think that, hey, why you want to show your dirty linens out to the public, right? So, but at the same time, I guess after I spoke to Ruiz and he graciously accepted our invitation, we are really happy, and grateful for him to share, because we came from the same intention of really wanting to add value, inspire people during this challenging time, right? So without further ado, let's welcome Ruiz. Let's give him a virtual clap.
No, thank you very much, 𝙗𝙗, and also Alan in the background for inviting me. I feel very honored and happy to share with you guys my experience about depression, anxiety, and also the journey I've been going through. So happy to answer any of your questions if you guys have anything specific later in the seminar. So yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So customary, I need to share, because actually we have a lot of new friends here. We have Ronnie, we have 𝙗𝙗𝙚𝙘, Alia, Ong, Saliha, Shakirin, Victoria. So if you guys who are listening from our Zoom webinar as well as FB Live, hi, my name is 𝙗𝙗, and I'm the founder of 𝙤𝙗𝙧𝙨. 𝙤𝙗𝙧𝙨 is really a personal finance academy of helping people turn around their situation and get into good financial health, right? So this idea, in case you guys don't know, I actually really like, I found out that we have a lot of things in common at Ruiz, because after speaking to you yesterday, this whole thing, how we started was how we actually, I basically posed a question of what was the first age you hit your first financial crisis as a question we were crowdsourcing for my first book. And you shared with me yesterday, you wrote your first ebook, right? So I'm sure that is, how would you say, it's like a feeling I would like to ask you further, because I think there are certain challenges, especially writing an ebook. We always think that it's so simple, but actually there's a lot of challenges behind it. So if you guys got any question, please feel free to ask in the comment section, and also do us a favor. Please help us to share the video so that we can reach out to more people, because our intention here really is to help more people to go through their current situation. If some of them may already have mental issues as well as depression, how they can overcome by watching this video, right? So without further ado, let's start with our very first question, right? So Ruiz, I happen to know that we actually have a lot of things in common. We grew up in the same area. I just found out that, well, we both grew up from Taman Tun.
Yep.
And let's talk about a bit about your YouTube channel first, because I believe you were sharing with me how you started early this year.
Sure.
Right? How you started this Personal Finance Challenge YouTube channel was as a result of wanting to create this 25 days challenge to get people to good financial health.
Yeah.
Right?
So I started off the Personal Finance Challenge. So that's a YouTube channel now that I run. I produce weekly videos talking about my knowledge, my experience regarding personal finance, but also sharing my journey from being someone who was working the 9-to-5 lifestyle, and then now being self-employed, running my own company, and also business with my partner. So the Personal Finance Challenge, as 𝙗𝙗 mentioned earlier, was started as a ebook first. I had this idea that personal finance has always been a topic of interest to me personally, but it was always been in my private realm. I've always talked about it just to myself and just managing my money away in my private time. But it's always been something that I thought would be fun, but also valuable for people to learn from sharing, from understanding what other people do. So I decided, you know what, let's write an ebook. And that occurred to me in December, about 1 month after I quit my 9 to 5. I decided, let's try to do a challenge for people. It initially started as a 30-day challenge of understanding step by step from A to Z what I did to build my own personal finance system. So I decided to write the ebook. I started in the first week of December. I ended up finishing the ebook by 31st December, and that was the goal, and published the ebook in 1st January. But when in the process of writing the ebook, there was a lot of hurdles and whatnot. And I decided that, when people land on the website, I wanted a video there. And I shot my first YouTube video as an introduction video of what the whole book was about. But from the process of doing the video, and me being someone who watches YouTube regularly, even during meals or even commuting and whatnot, I really enjoyed and admired people who were on YouTube and decided, you know what, this process is fun. I have time now on my hands, and I enjoyed the whole process. And it could perhaps lead to something in the far future. So I thought, let's try and start this YouTube channel, and this is where I am now. I'm creating weekly videos about my personal finance knowledge, and also really just sharing everything about my experience and knowledge on personal finance. I do monthly videos reviewing my finances. I tell and show everyone my expenses, my income, my investments now too, and also my net worth. This is more as a documentary for me to share with people about, what does it feel to actually leave the 9 to 5 and either succeed at the end of the day or fail at the end of the day. It'll all be a valuable learning, hopefully for me and everyone else.
That's the reason why I say I feel very connected to you, because I'm writing my ebook and I've started since April, and I set the deadline in July. So as I was writing, I realized that, oh my God, it's a different type of challenge of making YouTube videos, because like what you say, I eventually started making videos, and I to be honest, I don't really like making YouTube videos, but between writing and also making YouTube videos, I think making YouTube videos is a lot simpler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I disagree, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely need some of your advice, because you finish it within a month, and I actually downloaded today. I must say I'm impressed because of how detailed it was, and also some of the visuals, which is very easy to read, right? And it makes personal finance, which has always been very scary to a lot of people that I talk to. So you made it something very simple, and people enjoy going back to the ebook.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos.
Thank you.
Definitely need to learn from you.
The artwork and design and stuff is kudos to my partner, who's attending this webinar, I think.
Oh, that's Victoria. Okay. No wonder I saw the name so familiar. Okay, cool. Very nice artwork. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the more serious stuff, right? Because the whole reason why I wanted to get you on this interview is for you to share your story about what that happened 7 years ago. And I can really relate, because I went through 3 of my crises, and I can totally agree with you. Some of us may already have some of these symptoms. But let's start off your story with asking you this question. How do you even begin to be aware that you have this issue or the symptoms? What would the
So I first started noticing that something was wrong with myself in my second year of university. So I think I was 22 then. It was during summertime. And during that period, I started realizing that I couldn't focus in class. I started waking up later, didn't really have motivation to wake up either.
Sounds familiar.
And also, the azan. But also the fact that you just have this lack of life energy in yourself. So noticing all those things, I started going to the university clinic, just say, what's wrong? Am I sick? We did all the physical checkups available, like checking out my lungs. We did also an EKG. We did like various tests there and there. But then the doctor mentioned to me, you know what? You're perfectly physically fine. It could be a mental issue. And back then, my awareness about mental health was practically zero. I thought mental health was just something that you thought people, not you, would get.
Yeah.
It was something really far from you.
Exactly.
So when the notion came that, you know what, maybe I have a mental health issue, I just shrugged it off basically. I thought, you know what, maybe I'm just stressed out. I just need to relax and ignore it basically. 7 months passed by. The issue doesn't change, and I'm still getting worse. I'm still sleeping long, very lethargic, no focus, and lack of motivation to just do anything really. Things I enjoyed before, like playing games and whatnot, now become just more like a numb activity where you just do for the sake of it. After realizing for about 3 to 6 months, I still haven't spoken to anybody about this. It's only when it first struck me during an exam term where I missed out a few exams, and I also barely passed the credits for graduating from second year to third year.
So that was the wake-up call.
That was like, you know what, something's really wrong. This is because I've always been pretty good with exams, and I think as a student I was a pretty diligent student as well. So I felt this is something that is beyond me. I started opening up to my parents and talking to them. You know, I think I have depression, anxiety, and this is after like Googling, just understanding what depression and anxiety is about. So very bare, shallow information, knowledge about depression and anxiety. Spoke to my parents, and then we thought, let's go see a therapist. So when I came back to Malaysia for a visit, we visited a therapist, went for a few sessions, and learned everything about like CBT, about mental health issues, understanding a bit more about what is depression, what is anxiety. After going, I think for a few months there, I felt better. I felt, you know what, this is done. I'm back on my feet, and I could just not do it, not worry about this thing anymore. Went back to Japan.
But Ruiz, I just want to stop you there for a while, because when you mentioned the symptoms, right, I think anybody of us would have be able to relate to that kind of feeling where you feel not motivated, feel a bit lazy. That's how I felt this morning.
Yeah.
Right. So are you saying that all of us at certain point of time could have symptoms of depression and mental health issues?
I don't think so. I think there are two levels, right? Back then when I was in Japan, I described it to some of my friends about, you may have high blood pressure, but you've never had a heart attack before. But the moment you have a heart attack, your high blood pressure is going to be a serious thing. You really need to monitor.
Yep.
So same as depression and anxiety, I think to a certain degree, everyone will face some mental challenges, which could lead towards serious, chronic, or even acute depression and anxiety. But until it really hits you to the point where you have a serious episode, it's something that you want to control and manage properly. You don't want it to reach the point where you get a heart attack or like a mental attack or panic attack, basically.
So from a physical point of view, I mean, besides the wake-up call that you remembered, right? Were there any physical traits that you were displaying, like, maybe like shortness of breath or etc.?
Yeah, I remember, and it came to me out of the blue. I was doing an assignment, an engineering assignment for my university, just doing the assignment in library, and it was just going about the way. Nothing felt different. Suddenly, I had a panic attack, like out of the blue. I had a panic attack. Palpitations came up, heart was racing. When you have a panic attack, you start not being able to focus on anything, and also focus on everything because your senses are very heightened.
All over the place.
So it just felt like I'm having a panic attack, and that was the first time I felt it. And the panic attacks happened more frequently after that. It happened that first time, then it happened at my home out of the blue again. It happened during an exam. So physically, that was something which I would have told my therapist, and I told my parents as well. Like physically, that's what happens. That's the only like acute symptom that I can. Yeah.
So I mean, I went through depression and anxiety when I hit my first crisis. And I remember the time I was handling a 2 million ringgit project where eventually it was a very political scene, and a lot of things happened and I got backstabbed. And to a point, the worst case scenario, how I knew I had depression was I started not being able to confront people or even look people in the eye. And I was spending a lot of time in the toilet hiding. That was how bad it was.
Yeah.
But I mean, for you, since you mentioned that you actually got into that condition first, then only led to your financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
So could you tell us a bit more, like, subsequently after that, what happened?
So if I continue my story, after seeing the therapist, went back to Japan, thought everything was better. I felt better. I wasn't having more panic attacks. But as time passed by, I started realizing, you know what, I'm still not better. I'm still getting lack of motivation, still sleeping a lot and whatnot. And I mentioned to you yesterday, Kaho, but I don't really know which is the trigger of whether my being depressed and anxious got me into losing the interest of doing engineering anymore, and then hence making me not able to focus on studies and not wanting to do it anymore, or is the other way around where I had lost my interest in engineering and hence it's causing my depression. And the funny thing, or the thing which I look back and I always mention to my friends who I talk to this about, is that it's not one thing I feel that led to my depression and anxiety. It's a myriad of things that I think about, things that I felt. And it wasn't to say that I had a harsh childhood where my parents were not supportive or we were having financial issues that it was burdening me and whatnot. I had a fairly comfortable childhood and I grew up really well. And despite that, I still had these issues. And I had, from an external point of view, no reason to be depressed and anxious, but I still was. So it led me to that dilemma of one is I can't finish my university course because I just physically can't. I can't focus. I get panic attacks. I have no motivation to study, which meant that I would have to then break my bond with my sponsors. So I was sponsored by Petronas to go to Japan to study in university, which meant that Petronas has been paying for my tuition fees and also living expenses for the many years. So I had no way of paying back the debt because the debt is huge. And two, me not graduating from university meant that I will practically have no qualification to apply for jobs. So it became a financial issue in that sense that I have no financial capacity to pay the debt and no work capacity to even apply to get an income.
So you felt stuck. I always felt that the whole feeling of depression always comes from this overwhelming feeling that, you cannot deal with things. So I think you rightly said it in such a way that when you've got no reasons to be depressed, but eventually of how you got into this corner or were forced into this corner where whatever that you've been always wanting to study didn't really motivate you further, and having to pay off the bond, which was, I believe, it could be a substantial amount since that you are staying in Japan as well as taking engineering course, right? So I think that whole feeling of being trapped there is really real, and it's not just, we can't really say the environment of having a good background, etc., etc. I think even people who are in the situation will always, or rather, have a tendency to being trapped, right? So,
it made me feel helpless that my future was compromised because I now had no path and I had no way of creating a new path, or at least at that point it felt like it. And looking back as well is the guilt of, have I made a wrong decision and tried to commit to this for so long? And trying to get out of that path was borrowing Dean Young's word, a sunk cost, where, I've invested so much time, energy in this whole thing. Do I really want to get out of this now? Can I just push myself to just do another year or two of university and just get it over with, right? And move to the next life stage? But my depression and anxiety wasn't allowing me to.
I'm happy you brought that up because I also met a few of my friends who were my age when they actually have to fulfill what their parents want them to do, which is, they were forced to finish a medical 7-year degree in UK, but it's not really something that they really want to do. But they get into this depression because they didn't want to feel they let down their parents.
Yeah.
And eventually, when they finished the whole thing, and then they didn't really even practice medicine, which is a sad thing for both my friend as well as their parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, I want to empathize with these people who are going through such a difficult time, but that wasn't my case, and I guess one of the messages is that it's I'm an evidence of you can still get depressed and anxious. You can still get into this depression and anxiety problems despite having a good environment, a supportive environment. It could also be internal factors which are causing your depression and anxiety.
I mean, I love what you say. You hit it on the spot, which really 𝙤𝙬𝙧 is one of the contributors to depression and mental health, because you don't really have an avenue of where to go to. And I believe that a lot of people are currently suffering from those situations and are probably stuck. So hopefully, by them hearing your story, they actually have a way of getting out of that situation.
Yeah.
So then, what happened next? After when you start being aware, I think that's the first step, lah. If not, you could be even digging deeper into the situation, right?
So after a while, I say we because I speak to my parents about my depression and anxiety. I realized that it was something that I had to keep working on. Even today, I'm still working on handling my depression and anxiety. It's much better, but it was an ongoing struggle because one, it does directly handicap your capabilities of working, not from a like intelligence point of view or like competency point of view, but it's in terms of, you just one day may not have energy to do work, or you may not get out of your bed, for example, and it's severe enough that it physically renders you so. So I had that in the back of my mind, but I also knew that I also was trying to figure out what was the factors about my depression and anxiety, and one of the reasons that we thought was, okay, let's move out of this engineering path. Let's try and attempt something else. I knew that I did not want to continue my studies because I think back then, when I was looking around at my peers, some of my seniors as well, I recognized that some of them were also going through the same thing, or a very similar thing, where they were depressed. And some of them went through their masters, PhDs for so many years, repeating their years, and it just felt like they want to finish it, but they can't. They looked like they were stuck. And I also looked at other people who left Japan, leaving the environment to go study in a different university in Malaysia, for example. They too felt like they were a bit stuck, at least from my point of view. Because of that, I felt that I wanted to work. And I recognized from my years in university that there's a lot of things you can learn from work, but the issue is I'm not having a degree. How do I get work?
Yeah.
Hence, I started working. I went applied for odd jobs here and there, look at gigs. I went on Craigslist. I went to this forum called 𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙨 in Japan just to look for jobs here and there, asking from my juniors, my seniors, my friends who were in the student association, like, oh, I'm looking for an internship. And back then I had covered my story because I did not have the courage to tell people I was depressed. And hence I was just telling them, you know what, I want to hustle. I want to work. So I ended up applying for a lot of things. And thank God, fortunately, I ended up working as an intern for this startup, a fintech startup, which eventually hired me. And before I left my company to work for myself, I was working for the startup for about 6 years. And the startup basically gave me a second chance.
Nice.
They really saved me from it.
But before you go any further, Ruiz,
Yeah.
I'm just very curious, would you say, could it be the environment? Because Japan is really a very stressful type of environment to work in. I mean, I've had friends who's working there.
Yeah.
So would you say that is one of the contributing factors looking back right now?
It could be. I do not discount it. Because when I was in Japan, there were times where I would still, so one of my biggest symptoms is I would just fall asleep for a very long time. When I mean a very long time, I've slept over 48 hours before.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And there were times where even if I'm not sleeping for very long, I'll just be in my room and I will not leave the room apart from just to go to the toilet and eat for a week or maybe even 2 weeks time. So that were my symptoms. That was the situation.
That's quite serious.
Yeah, it's quite serious, Carl. And
Yeah, because
back then.
I just wanted to share with you. For me, I thought I was serious, because at the point of time when I got stuck because I couldn't deliver the project, and then eventually I didn't know how to confront my boss. And I wasn't a quitter, So the way I fall asleep is, those days when you watch TV and you still have those snowflakes.
Snowflakes?
Oh yeah,
The one you shake, is it?
No. You know how you watch TV those days after 12, you got no program anymore, and then the TV will just have snowflakes falling down.
Oh, okay. This is new to me. This is a generation gap.
So literally, right, I have to make myself fall asleep by watching or just sitting in front of TV until when there's no more program. I thought that was bad, but 48 hours is really a different level.
Yeah, those were when it was really serious. And so I interned with the company for about a year, and then worked in Japan for another year or so, and then left Japan to work in Malaysia. So the company had a project in Malaysia, and they basically sent me to Malaysia to run the company there.
Nice.
So I ended up working in Malaysia as well. So I thought, you know what, if Japan's the factor, then working in Malaysia shouldn't be a problem. No. I think my parents and my family can testify the fact that I stayed in my room for a very long time, and they were very worried. They tried a lot of things to help me.
I mean, I must say that it takes a lot of courage, and I'm very happy for you to be where you are right now because you finally conquered the whole situation, right? But before you even got to the point when you say, I want to apply for a job, for somebody who's depressed, right, literally you don't really want to do anything. But what was the motivating factor for you to say, hell no, I've got to do something? And what was that push that got you out of whatever?
To be honest, I think it was just survival instinct. Like I was still depressed. I was still unmotivated to do things. But if when you are in that state of depression, waking up and just opening the computer to look at jobs is already a win. And if you can apply for one job that day, that's a win. If you can get out to buy food for yourself, that's a win.
Exactly.
So it's about taking that step by step of small wins every day and being able to do it. But if there's anything, I guess it was survival instinct and the fact that I could help myself to do something, because it was a feeling of helplessness of not being able to do anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if I think about being back then and thinking about how do I even think about paying Petronas and how do I even find a job without a degree, you'll feel helpless. Exactly. But one thing I could do is, okay, I can apply for a job. I could appear as an intern, as a student. Let's try and do that first. Let's see where that leads to. Nice. So there were multiple jobs which I applied. It didn't lead to anything. I was working as a part-time secretary for this guy, and after working for him for a few weeks, I figured out that this is just going to be an income. It's not going to be anything else. I worked for translation jobs, and I seriously thought about it. I could be a translator. I could be an interpreter in Japan. That could lead somewhere, but after a while, I realized I did not enjoy it. I did a small gig acting for this Ray-Ban advertising. I have no acting skills, so I will not thrive in that. But then it was really lucky for me. I was really lucky that I spoke to my junior, and she was interning at this startup, which I felt like I could do something. So I ended up chasing the CEO for about 2-3 months, asking for an interview, because he kept being busy and couldn't attend the interview. Yep. I ended up chasing him for 2-3 months and getting his time to interview, and ended up working for him. So it was just really small wins. I didn't have a mastermind plan. You know what? I'm going to land in this startup, and ended up being hired and whatnot. It was just small wins.
But to be honest, right, I mean, if I were to put myself when I was going through my first depression in your situation, right, wouldn't you say that some of the jobs when you apply you didn't get will put you in a deeper depression?
Oh, yeah. It definitely did.
Yeah, so what was then the motivating thing to even push you to do more of it? Because you'll be thinking like, if I'm going to do more, now I'm going to be more depressed.
Because the thing is, there's nothing when you're rock bottom, there is nothing else to lose.
Okay, I like this quote. I used to say that in my third crisis though.
Yeah, because if you're not doing anything to help yourself, that's the worst it can get. I mean, the other worst thing is die, but that wasn't an option in my mind, thankfully.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, because suicidal can be what a lot of people think is the exit, but actually this is not lah. It's just not lah. Yeah.
And I think it was very inspiring as well, because it was very inspiring for me to listen to other people too who was going through depression. So like TED Talks videos has a lot of things regarding depression. So you learn about what other people think and what their struggles are for. When I was in Malaysia, I went to this seminar by Relate Malaysia. So they have a Facebook group if anyone's interested, called Relate Malaysia. They're very good in terms of spreading the awareness, teaching people about mental health. I did attend a seminar then as well by this doctor from Singapore who talked about depression, what was the treatment, what could do to help, for example. So really just learning more about my illness too helped. The fact that I know it's not hopeless. Nice. I've seen there are examples of other people who managed to go through it as well. So it lifted me to say, you know what, I can do something. Let's do something small at least.
Yeah, you know what, if they can do it, so can you, right?
Yeah.
So we got a question from Wendy from FB. Sometimes when we wanted to be perfectionists or set our expectation way beyond what our mental health can do, could this also lead to anxiety and depression?
Sorry, by Wendy, yeah? Thank you, Wendy. I think, well, this reminds me of, have you heard of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset?
I've heard of it, but maybe you can explain.
Well, I don't think I can explain it too well, but a fixed mindset is basically like a scarcity mindset. You feel like you need to be a certain way so that you are perfect. You need to achieve a certain thing to be perfect, and the pie is fixed. If I don't do it, someone else will. And it's a very inhibiting mindset to be in.
Yep.
Instead, if you have a growth mindset, which is moving away from perfectionism, a growth mindset is basically saying the pie can grow.
Yep.
As in, you don't have to do things perfectly, but you can do it in a way which could lead you towards other things. And there's value in terms of, there's value in learning, there's value in growing and trying new things. So I think perfectionism, and I think I used to be a perfectionist too, in the sense that I needed it to be that way. I would spend 80% of my energy just to get the last 20% right.
High five.
I'm not sure if I want to high five on that, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a perfectionist as well, so I'm asking you to high five.
Yeah, but I think when you're a perfectionist, you start devaluing the fact that you are growing. When I do small steps and you get small wins, a perfectionist might think, no, that's not what a perfectionist does. A perfectionist needs to be this way, and only until I reach that way, I will be fine. I will be whole. But someone who has the growth mindset is like, oh, I'm learning something new. I'm doing something more valuable for me, and that's great, and that's enough, and you feel happy with that. So to answer your question directly, I do think it leads to anxiety and depression.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
I was the kind of student who wanted to reach like 10 A's. If I don't get it, I'll get depressed. I'll get sad. So let's try and move away from that, Wendy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I used to be a perfectionist as well. And I think if you are a perfectionist and it leads you to strive for better things, pushing you forward, I think it's good. But I think being a perfectionist, but it holds you back and it drowns you even more, I think that's bad. That's essentially what you're saying, that would lead that person to being in depression. And I realized, these few years that actually I have a lot of perfectionist friends, I know. So I realized it's not the perfectionist that's doing harm to themselves, but they're actually doing harm to the people around them as well, because the aura and the energy that they dispel sometimes can actually turn people away, right? And you said it very well, because just now, I think if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned something very subtle, like how you actually begin to get out of your mental health issue and depression was really about being open and communicating with your family, your lecturers. I think that's very under, what's that word? underestimated of how powerful communication is. Would you say that, Ruiz?
Yeah, I think something that I'm really appreciative of is really all the people who have been supportive of me throughout the journey. And I think I wouldn't have realized that unless I opened up and communicated with them. Like for one, first of all, is my parents. Like I open up to them, and instead of being people who are like, oh no, don't think that way, you're fine, blah blah blah. Instead, they were open and they were patient with me to understand depression and anxiety, even though we all did not know what it was about. And then also I had a partner then who were also open to me, and the fact that she didn't just discard my illness too. And the other thing, which I think is more applicable for, I hope to be applicable to a lot of people, is being open to your employers, to your managers, to your bosses. I like to think that people are more aware about mental health now. And just a thumbs up to Malaysia's society in a way. Malaysia is definitely more aware about mental health than the general Japanese public, I think, from my experience. Because of that, when I opened up to my bosses in Japan too, I was very surprised that they were more than willing to accommodate me. They were more willing to understand my depression, anxiety, what do I need and stuff. And I think if I hid away from them about what my issues were, they would instead maybe look at me in a way where I was trying to act shady or I was just incompetent, rather than really understanding that I have this issue. So I ended up having a policy of being transparent to all my bosses in Japan, in Malaysia, and also in the UK. And luckily, they were all very supportive. Even when I had bouts where I was not showing up to work for a long time, I preempted them saying, I have this issue and this might come up. Let's find a way so that my work can still continue, even when I'm down. So we try to work around that. And I hope, and I hope that more employers would adopt a more supportive policy like that.
I mean, I definitely, I'm definitely very happy that you, or rather, I really admire your courage, because not many people can come clean with their employers, especially when I got into my first crisis, right? I literally tendered resignation because not knowing how to communicate. I thought that was the easy way out, right? But eventually they counter offered me, and then I stayed. And slowly by slowly, I realized that communication is the real way out, right? So
if I may add, Kaho,
yeah,
because even if after being open to my employers after a few years, some of them went through the same thing, and because I had opened up to them, they now also had someone else they could talk to as well.
I think that's very important, right?
I'm sorry?
I think that's very important, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Because, I mean, if Kaho's a boss and he's going through depression and anxiety, he will also need help. He's a human being after all. And I think the more people talk about this and open about it, the more supportive and helpful we can be with one another, apart from imposing this level of perfection, which is unrealistic.
I guess the fear is really real, because in Malaysia, especially when we tell this to employers, the fear of them thinking that we're incompetent and eventually us not getting that promotion, or feeling. I think that one is very real. So that's why I say it's very courageous of you being able to do that. I don't think a lot of people are able to do that. But I guess what we really want to share with our audience tonight is really to really take the first step of opening up and communicating. If the employer is not somebody that you feel comfortable with, at least your family, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we got another question. But before I share this question, I just want to reach out to all the people in the webinar. In case you guys got any question, right, just feel free to type in the Q&A part where we're gonna ask Ruiz, right? Yeah, he's gentleman enough and open enough that he said he will answer all the questions. So Wendy is asking another question. He say, yeah, thanks, Ruiz. The mindset helps. I guess one thing is that I'm not meeting what the boss's expectation and worrying that I'll get scolded, which leads to anxiety and panic attack, especially when your boss asks you to meet them. Yeah, I think this is something related to what we were saying just now.
Yeah, like if I'm being totally honest, the first year when I was working with the startup during my internship, I did not tell them. So I knew that the first year I had to prove my competency, that I was capable enough to work and be hired by them. And after 1 year, after we had the annual review, and then the CEO then offered me the job, I said, thank you very much for the offer, but I need to tell you this. So then I told him, look, I have depression and anxiety, which is why sometimes I don't respond as quickly, or I have some issues. And also back then I told him I was going to drop out of university. Knowing this, would you still want to offer me a job, basically? And he said to me that he was more than convinced now, after knowing that he wants to. So I knew that this employer was the right person for me, that I wanted to work for this person. And even now, I mean, I'll give a shout out to my startup. They're called Finatext, and I love the company. I left the company not because they were incompetent or whatnot, but more for my personal dreams. But if they offer me a job that I think it's good for me, I'll definitely go back to them. And I love the company and what they stand for. So
cool.
And this loyalty is genuine, because they were very supportive to me. And I think the choice of employer, you need to think about also how supportive are they about your mental health issues too. Do you want to work for someone who is very restrictive, who doesn't believe in these mental health issues, for example? But another thing is also maybe opening up to them in the sense that they might not be aware of it, right? Educating them in a way of opening up is also one thing I'd consider. Yeah.
Are they hiring?
They are, but in Japan, not in Malaysia, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, because you really given a very high testimony to this company. I'm sure a lot of people are asking the same question as well, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back a few steps, right, Ruiz? Because I'm sure that a lot of the audience here would be curious as well as to what are the 4 steps, that you actually took to overcome your whole situation. Because you mentioned that your anxiety and depression actually got you into the financial problem, financial crisis, and then eventually you did share a lot of more of the interpersonal solution.
Yeah.
Right. But what are the personal finance solution that you can share with our audience? Is there any?
Specifically for depression and anxiety related, I think first and foremost, this might not be a practical step, but first and foremost, I wanted to put this out there in this webinar, and also I mentioned in the video that you have to dissociate the fact that solving your financial issues may not necessarily solve your depression and anxiety issues. Because I had landed the job, I had started getting income, a salary, and a stable financial life, but I was still depressed. So I think that was an expensive lesson for me, in the sense that I thought by getting a job, I won't be depressed anymore. If I get a right employer, I won't be depressed anymore. So that's something to factor in. But I think having a clear understanding of your finances are also very important. And when I say clear understanding is, well, first of all, record your expenses. What are you spending on? Are you spending on unnecessary things? And then have a budget. It could be a monthly budget. Start with a monthly budget. But for anyone who is able to, do an annual budget. And reason I say annual budget is because what you budget for your monthly expenses will not necessarily show all your true expenses. Like during Hari Raya, or during Chinese New Year or New Year's, or your friend's birthday, or your anniversary with your girlfriend or whatever, you may be spending more. You will definitely spend more a bit.
For sure.
So budget for those things too, and understand what are your debt levels, what are your net worth. These are all basic, I think, personal finance steps that you can take, which are readily available. You can look at a lot of blogs, you can look at my videos, you can go on Reddit, for example, or a lot of articles out there. Even 𝙗𝙗, I'm sure, will be teaching you guys about all this stuff too. These are basic steps which everyone, I think, should take if they want to have a clear understanding of their finances. Because when you're trying to figure out your mental health issues, you don't want the finances to come in the way, because that will add to your stress. And I guess that's the second lesson, right? You want to ensure that you have some kind of ease in terms of managing your finances, so that you have time and space to handle your mental health issues.
Before you go to the 3rd and 4th, right? I like the way you say how the mental health issues is one situation, and then the personal finance is another situation. Sometimes, for me, I was of that situation where I got into the mental depression issue, and that led me to my first financial crisis as well,
Yeah.
right? But I guess after solving, like what you say, after solving the financial crisis, it doesn't mean that the depression will go away.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. But there is another situation which I think what we are preaching here in terms of personal finance, once you actually get or do whatever 4 steps that we are going to share later on, will help you to not even lead to mental health issue and depression, because if it's something money is causing, once you get your personal finance done rightly, then you wouldn't fall into that situation as well, right? That's what you're saying, Ruiz, right?
Yeah, I'm basically saying that you want to just make sure, you want to insure yourself in the sense that you may not necessarily solve your mental health issues if you solve your financial issues, but if solving your financial issues does solve your mental health issues, then that's great.
Yeah.
For
exactly.
myself, I was the former one, where solving my financial issues, I still had my depression issues. So just warning people in the sense that that might be your case too.
Yeah, I love how you articulate it, because I think a lot of people would really appreciate, because thinking that, once they solve their financial problem, then they will automatically solve their mental health issues, which may not happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, continue on, please.
Oh, sorry. Number 3 is I think related to what Wendy was asking. It's about I think finding an employer that is supportive or understanding of your situation is important. The reason being is because, yes, family is going to be there all the time, but work is also going to be a huge part of your life. I think a lot of people who are working adults will spend 9 to 5, 9 to 6, or even beyond that. Knowing Malaysians, you will work beyond 9 to 5. So how your relationship with your employer is really important. And that's something which I advise anyone in Malaysia, or even generally everyone in Asia, really, because I think Asians are workaholics, naturally are workaholics. So if you don't have a boss or employer who are going to be understanding enough for your mental health issues, that's going to be really tough. So if you have the choice to choose an employer who will be more supportive, then do it. I think a practical step is, if you go for interviews, ask them directly, how do you handle people with mental health issues or depression and anxiety? If they say, oh, why are you asking this? This is a stupid question. You say, this is not stupid. This is 2021. Mental health is a trending topic. I need this affirmation from you guys. If you guys are already with an employer, I think, well, I'm guessing here, but from the friends and people around me who have spoken to me and I've spoken to, a lot of people are going through these issues, whether it's severe or at a light stage. A lot of people are having mental health challenges. And I'm very surprised by a lot of the friends around me who have come up to me, say, I've seen your video, or I've heard about you talking about this on your podcast before, and I just wanted to speak more about that. And you'll be surprised that a lot of people are going through similar struggles, but unless someone starts opening up, it's going to be very difficult. So if you're not comfortable speaking to your manager or bosses, maybe speak to that colleague that you're a bit more close to.
Yep.
Ask, like, what do you know about mental health? I think I may have something, or do you know anyone who's facing that? Start that conversation in your workforce. I think it's a very timely topic to talk about. So take advantage of it.
Exactly. I think it's been amplified, especially during this crisis and COVID-19. Yeah. A lot of people are trapped in their home. Sometimes you face a laptop 24 hours a day, not 24, maybe 18, but the gist is really you work harder and longer hours than before, right?
Yeah.
And there's now a fine line between knowing when to actually stop doing work and actually going back to taking care of your family. The line is so blurry right now that people can't really tell when is when anymore.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is really, really important. And I like the fact that you also mentioned, Ruiz, that, mental health issues used to be thought of as something like, people are crazy, that's why they're going through it, and you must need to go to Tanjung Rambutan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I guess right now, it has been well understood that a lot of people already have this kind of issue, but it's just that it's not easily surfaced out. And the more that we open up and the more that we talk to, then we realize that actually a lot of people have either gone through or are currently in this situation as well.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what we said about communication, right? Being open and transparent about your own struggles is difficult. I struggled with it when I first started. Just talking to my therapist, practically a stranger, about how I'm feeling was something I've never done before. Now imagine doing that to your family, to your friends. It's difficult, but it's because we are out of practice, I feel. I think the Westerners do it very well when it comes to really speaking more about their mind and whatnot. But when it comes to Asians, I feel that we tend to hold back. We need to handle this phase that we need to manage, right?
Yeah.
But because of that, I think now, especially if you're listening in, try to take that step to talk about it. There's nothing wrong about being vulnerable. There's nothing wrong about being in touch with your emotions. Instead, it might be a sign of strength.
Yeah, I think we've got a small win here because Wendy is mentioning that her comments is that it's very encouraging that whatever you're sharing, Ruiz, what she's going to do is she's going to set an appointment with her boss and open up to him, sharing. Hopefully it breaks down the fear in communicating with him. Awesome.
That's good. That's good. That's great.
Ruiz. Yeah, I think that's the whole intention why we want to do this video as well. And she mentioned small wins and growth mindset is personal. In the personal financing will slowly bring us out from anxiety and depression. Yeah. So I guess we don't really have a lot of questions. Maybe for the fact like what we mentioned earlier, sometimes it's not easy being vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started sharing my personal story in my workshop as well, and it's scary, it's scary. And I finally got an epiphany. I mean, I just want to share this story, since we don't have questions. I had an epiphany because I actually saw one of my coach or mentor did it in his workshop, and the previous mindset, we always think that, if you're sharing this kind of story, you must be weak. But after he shared that, I saw how many people actually took up whatever excuses and blind spots that they have and just use whatever strength that he was sharing in his story to push themselves even further. And that was the start when it was March 18 last year when we had our first lockdown. And many businesses, including mine, we were struggling and everybody was lost. So when he shared that story, I was like, oh my God, I can do that too.
Yeah.
But not for the fact that I wanted to boast or, it's nothing nice to boast about your depression story, but how it actually gives people strength and give them motivation to do what seems to be the impossible, right?
Yeah. I think start small because I only started talking about my depression and anxiety openly 2-3 years ago. And I started off with, when I mean open up, as in open up to other people apart from my family and partner. I started talking to one of my close friends who I trust. And it was really just like a lepak session, going out at night, drinking coffee or drinking tea. And then slowly you talk about things and the topic comes up or it crosses your mind. Let me just try and talk to him or her and see how he feels. Right? You can just start off with that first. Because again, it's the small wins, right? If you can just talk to someone about it, that's already a win. You don't expect them to respond in a way that's going to be super supportive because you don't know how they will feel. I've had people where I speak to them and they're like, it's fine, just be happy lah. Like that doesn't really help. And it's a bit discouraging, but which is why I think it's important to pick who you speak to first. Speak to the people you trust first, small wins. And I think slowly it will accumulate and make you more confident about speaking about your issues.
Yeah, so I mean, if any of you really got any questions, feel free to type in the comment box. But if you guys feel there is something personal you want to PM myself or Ruiz, I think I need to get his permission. Is that okay, Ruiz?
Yeah, that's
If
totally
any
fine.
of you wanted to ask any personal question. But I just want to ask another question before I forget, which goes back to when you were sharing. You know how when you were saying that when you were already in that situation and then you sort of started applying for jobs, and I was asking you what was the motivation. This is a follow-up question to that. So
Mhm.
was there anybody, you know how we watch movies, when you're down and you're sort of out, then you have that best friend of yours who lives in the same room as you and
Yeah.
try to kick you in the butt or, pour water on you sort of to wake you up. Do you have somebody like that that actually gave you motivation and pushed you? If yes, would you like to share who that person is?
Not one person. I think my CEO, that hired me in the startup, he's been very encouraging and very open to me. He's always asked me before, even after working for him for 1 year, it's like, Riz, what do you want to do in the future? I'm like, I don't really know. But he said, you want to start something? It's like, yeah, maybe my own business one day. It's like, just do it. You want to leave now? Just do it. Just leave. That's one thing. In that very casual encouragement way. But a moment in my life in Japan, which I really remember vividly now. So I was working in a Starbucks. I had coffee, and this guy just came by. I'm not sure where he's from, but he looks Southeast Asian to me. He came by and we just started talking. He was a tourist. He's just traveling. He said, "So what do you do?" I said, "I was working for the startup, yada yada, just talking about what I do." He said, "What do you do? What's your plans?" I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just traveling the world, seeing what's out there.
Wow.
Yeah, see what's going on tonight. Maybe tomorrow we'll meet something interesting. I heard there's something interesting there, so I might go there as well." He felt very floaty, just not really knowing what he wants, but he had this aura of confidence of living in the moment. Like, I am enjoying what I'm doing and happy. And he didn't look necessarily rich or anything. He was just wearing his backpack and whatnot, and he had this sense of like adventure in him. And I think that stuck to me because I thought like, oh, he exudes this feeling of freedom, and even though he doesn't know what the future lies, what future lies for him, he's able to walk every day with confidence and still be happy. And I thought, oh, that's something that maybe I want to try and achieve too. So yeah.
Yeah, I really admire people like that because I felt that I couldn't do it, and I am still practicing to live in the moment, being present. Yeah, I think that's very important as well. Okay, we got a question here. Chiao is asking, I'm curious, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self, such as deciding their career path after SPM?
I give this advice to myself, but I don't think he will listen. I would say not to be so stuck on one path. So I was very stuck on the idea that I wanted to be a robotics engineer who studied in Japan, who built robots basically. And that was something I was very ambitious for and passionate for. And for so many years, I was invested in the idea. But lo and behold, when then the path shattered, my dream shattered in a way. So I think the advice I would give is to be open to new possible futures. You don't know what's out there, and you don't know what wonderful things may be in front there, which you can't even imagine. Okay? Even after this pandemic, there might be new things which come up that we never even knew about, which we might be really passionate for. Maybe we can travel to Mars in the next few years, for example, and that's totally a whole new thing.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking forward.
you can do your best at one thing, but I would say be open to new possibilities and don't just be stuck with the one path.
Lovely sharing. So we have two more last questions. Shall we take the two more last questions? Are you okay?
Oh yeah, sure. I don't mind.
Yeah. Then we're going to do a wrap up, and as usual, I will just share my 3 learnings from today's session. But before that, let's get to Wendy's question. She's asking, you mentioned earlier about Relate Malaysia. Do they offer service for a fee?
I'm not sure now, but a few years back when I did speak to them, they kicked off an online therapy session, which was really cheap. And when I mean cheap, it was under 100 ringgit. I think it started off within like 25 ringgit or so, which is very cheap compared to the therapy sessions you might get from like private clinics. So do check them out. And it's all online now, especially with COVID is very timely. So yeah, do check them out. Yeah.
Okay. Another question she's asking is there any online free tool that you know for us to self-assess whether we have mild anxiety and depression?
I wouldn't quote any specific ones, but I've done quite a few online. Like online, if you do like depression anxiety test or stress test, for example, there are a lot of that outside. Try one of them, or try a few which you think are suitable for you. But that's how I diagnosed myself in the beginning, Wendy. I went online like, am I depressed? Test. Then did all the questions. I'm like, you're depressed. I like, no, I don't want this. I went to another one and did another test. But yeah, that's how I got to know I was depressed.
Thanks for being so genuine and honest. Yeah. So yeah, isn't stress test supposed to be that treadmill thing that you run on?
There's that one. There's a physical stress test, but there's also the actual like mental stress one you can just do online.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie. Ronnie is actually answering Wendy's question. He's saying that there is a test called Generalized Anxiety and Depression Scale. Thanks, Ronnie. So maybe you want to Google that.
Thanks, Ronnie.
All right, so we've come to the end of this session. As usual, I'm going to wrap up this session by sharing my 3 key takeaways. Definitely, thank you very much for you spending your time, Ruiz.
You're welcome. Happy to do so.
But really, like I said, especially when I organized this session, I felt that sometimes I still feel guilty, but yeah, that's one of the key takeaway. It's not to feel guilty and to turn the situation around, to turn the energy from a negative to positive, because I think that's what you're saying subtly. Because I guess guilty really sinks you deeper into depression, but rather than feeling guilty, actually I could feel grateful for what you are doing to me as well, or doing for us as well, right? So that's one of the key takeaway I've gotten from your sharing. Second thing here is about communication. I guess there's no way that we will over communicate. As much as I like to say that, but my son is very talkative. But in a sense, I think it's a good thing because I think in general, my family, we keep a lot of things to ourselves. I guess being an introvert, I think introvert tend to be of higher percentage or higher likability to being depressed because they rarely talk about their situation. But yeah, communication is really so important, but a lot of us overlook this simple trait, right? Yeah. And the third one would be, I love how you mentioned about choosing an employer who is empathetic about your situation as a team member as well. I think right now we can see a lot more about employers being more employee centric and getting past that fear of really asking those hard questions. I think that's something which I learned from you in terms of the courage, because we came from a generation where the boss say like this, then we'll follow. The boss say run, then you run. The boss say you sit, then you sit. But because I guess maybe at that point of time, I didn't come from a family that has a background that I needed to work to support them. But I guess we came from a background where if we work earlier, the earlier we work, we could sort of help the family to soften whatever stress they could have already. Yeah, really, thank you so much. That's the 3 biggest takeaway I've gotten from your sharing.
No, thank you very much, 𝙗𝙗, for inviting me. I'm honored to share my experience and lessons with you guys.
Yeah. So before I let you go, I just realized that you know Japanese. Is there any message in Japanese that you like to share with our audience?
Oh, Japanese message. But let me see who's in. Is there anyone who would understand Japanese? That's the first thing. well, well.
Sayonara is going to be too
I guess
simple
just
for-
let's finish off with a. let's end it off with like a more inspiring thing. So the Japanese have this thing where they say "yareba dekiru," which basically means if you do it, you can. Which I feel, if it's a matter of speaking to your family, friends about your mental health issues, your depression, anxiety, if you do it, I'm sure you can. And if it's a matter of reaching out to your boss, your employees about mental health issues, I think if you just do it, you definitely can do it. So do it.
Lovely. Can you repeat it again? Because you say too fast. I heard yabba dabba doo.
It's yareba dekiru.
Yareba
Yareba dekiru. Let me type it up.
Dikiru. Yareba Dikiru. Okay, thank you very much. At least we learned a Japanese word today. So I guess I hope you guys learned something as well going through this whole 1 hour. Thank you very much for your time. And we hope to see you in the next episode where I'm going to invite somebody. Anybody who have an interesting turnaround story to share, do reach out to me, because we're always wanting to feature people who have a story to tell to inspire others, right? So stay safe, stay strong, guys. Take care. Thanks, Ruiz, again.
All right. Thank you very much, 𝙗𝙗. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Yareba Dikiru.